and good morning, everyone. This is such a large room, and I feel a mile away from you, but we're going to make the best of the setup we have. So I'm Alan Brown. I'd like to thank Audiences Norway for the invitation to be here. I've been researching and speaking on this topic of audience engagement for many years, and I'm happy today to share with you a sort of framework for thinking about audience engagement in hopes that you will leave with some ideas, maybe some questions for improving your audience engagement, whether you work for a theater or an orchestra, an opera company, or a museum. We'll have time for questions afterwards. Hilda will be taking your questions. I promise to stop in about 35 or 40 minutes, and if I don't, just go like this and I'll stop, I promise. But I have a lot of material to share with you today, so feel free to get up and have coffee or stand up and walk around, however you need to stay awake. So most of the ideas and the diagrams that I'll share with you this morning are in this publication. It's called Making Sense of Audience Engagement. It was published about 4 years ago by the San Francisco Foundation, and you can download this publication from my website at wolfbrown.com/makingsense. It is free, and if you don't feel like you have to write things down madly or take pictures of the screen, because everything you need is in here. But really the question I have is, how do you prefer to engage? I mean, think about your own preferences for engaging. When you go to the theater, do you like to read the synopsis in advance? Do you arrive early and read the program notes? Do you go to the website and watch a video or listen to a podcast? And then afterwards, do you like to argue with other people about the art, and have a lively conversation about it, or do you prefer to reflect privately? There are so many different approaches, and the thing about audience engagement is it's different for everyone. Everyone has different ways of engaging with art. And everyone's preferences are valid, as valid as anyone else's. And I think that's some of the hardest thing for us to accept, is because we wish people were very intellectually engaged in the art, but not everyone is, of course. So the focus on engagement has really been growing for many years in the US, in certainly UK, Australia, and I'm sure here in Norway. There's a much more substantial attention being paid to audience engagement. We're certainly finding it in audience research studies that preferences for engagement are a key discrimination factor between different segments of audience members. There's still some controversy around audience engagement, especially providing interpretive assistance to audience members during a work of art. So you remember 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when supertitles at the opera were first introduced. It was a big scandal. Oh my God, people would be reading during the opera. Now it's I think attributed to a great increase in attendance among young people. But there's many new interesting technological developments. And this is really new territory for evaluation. I mean, how do you know, how would you know if you engage someone successfully? Right? It presents a real evaluation challenge. And then how much is enough? So these are very, very difficult questions, but I'll say that engagement, and I should stop and define what I mean by engagement, right? Engagement, audience engagement. I should ask you for a definition, right? What is audience engagement? Everything that you do to help audience members create meaning from your artistic work. Everything you do. So that would include marketing, because really marketing is where it all starts. It would include publications, the way you actually present and produce the art, and then everything you do before and after, right? So audience engagement is everything you do to create meaning, to help audience members create meaning. We're seeing some of the broad trends in participation that are driving the marketplace towards more and more engagement. So demand for more intense, multisensory, and customized experiences, right? So more people want to design their own experience. So arts groups are offering more options. You can come early, you could stay after. We have a social hour beforehand, so forth. The types of interactivity and interconnectivity between audience members is changing. Higher expectations. A desire for social experiences, for sure, is a major trend, particularly trying to attract younger adults to arts programs. The social element is becoming more and more important. And then just the artist desire, also this is coming from artists who want to have a closer relationship with their audience members. So we're finding more and more artists, composers, choreographers, curators wanting to have a dialogue with their audience. So all of these things are driving just greater demand for a wider diversity of artistic experiences, offering people choices to make. And it's a very exciting time in our field right now because we have this intense period of experimentation with a wide array of engagement programs and activities. No one is keeping track. It's a wide open field of practice that I think is having a major effect on the public. So to help think about audience engagement, I have created just a very, very simple diagram, which I call the arc of engagement, just to help build a shared vocabulary, a shared way of communicating about audiences. And this is the arc. And it traces the, oh my God, I'm not moving ahead here. I wish someone, you see, Hilda, you should have stopped me. See, you didn't even miss it. There we go. I'm standing up here. How long would you let me go before you said, Alan? It's okay. Arc of engagement. Traces how the engagement process unfolds. It's a very simple diagram, and all it suggests is that from the very moment that someone buys a ticket or they agree to go, that's the thing with arts participation, is half of arts participation is explained by a social invitation. Hey, would you like to go to the opera with me? Right? You don't even participate in a decision process, you just agree. Right, and that's the power of a social invitation is so extraordinary. People will go to things they never would choose for themselves with the right invitation. So the marketing message here is so important because that's where all of this engagement work starts, at the very beginning. And then sometimes people buy tickets 6 months in advance, even some subscriptions a year in advance. Right, or some more and more younger people buy later and later, so they're buying tickets a few days before the event. And then you have this opportunity to help them understand what they will see. And they may seek out the information, you may provide it to them automatically by virtue of having their contact information. But all of that is the build-up to this moment where they actually arrive. Actually, I think it's several hours before they arrive, and they're thinking about it. And they're saying, oh gosh, I want to arrive early and read the program, but I can't. We have dinner reservations, and there's a million reasons why people never quite get it together to arrive early. But there's this moment where the event is imminent, where you have this energy to capture and help people understand what they're about to see. Then you have the artistic event itself in the middle, and often this is the only experience people have. They have no preparation and no afterwards. So all you have to work with is that envelope of the artistic experience, and then afterwards, post-processing, all the things people do to make meaning of the work they've just seen. And then after that, the event fades into memory, maybe to be forgotten forever, or maybe to be remembered forever. And I think we have a lot to think about how we can help people remember. Because when you forget, it's over. There's no more impact, except what's left in your subconscious, right? But when you remember, the impact continues. And it's amazing. All of you can remember peak experiences you had often as children or young adults, and you will remember them all your life. I love asking people, what's the most impactful arts experience you've ever had? And people remember right away experiences they had 20, 30 years ago. It's amazing how we remember. And that's what I call the impact echo. So I'm going to move quickly through this and just give some examples of the different stages here. So build up and contextualization, really. And again, here is where marketing is so strategic to organizational mission, because often the marketing message is the only information people have before they go. It's maybe one paragraph of promotional copy and then one photograph, in your brochure. And that's all they have. That's all they know. They don't want more information. They don't need more information. That's all they have. And that's why it's so important to message accurately about your artists. So you set up accurate expectations. I read so much promotional copy that's just impossibly fabulous. Everything is fabulous. And at some point, I think people get numb to that. It doesn't make sense anymore. So helping people understand what they will see, how they can relate to it, is so important. So we have a lot of organizations developing video content for their websites. Now I see more arts organizations making short video trailers, much like movies, trailers for movies, 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes. And they're using those both as for sales and also for engagement. And they can serve both purposes. So if you buy a ticket, you get a message with a link to the trailer or other contextual information. We don't have time to watch this, but there was a wonderful marketing director at the Malmö Opera Company in Sweden, Thomas Wickel. He did a wonderful, wonderful project. He had a new opera, a commission, and he commissioned a local writer to assume the identity of the lead character in the opera and blog in character. Do you understand? So this woman was blogging, and many people started watching the blog, and soon there was more internet traffic for the blog than the entire website. And it was he describes this in this video, and if you just go to YouTube and search on Thomas Wickel, you'll find it. And I just thought it was a brilliant example of pre-performance engagement, capturing the imagination of the community. He also identified just the right form of social media, a blog. It's very narrative. It's well suited for telling a story. And this woman blogged, and as in the opera, she kills herself at the end of the blog. And people came out to a funeral, a mock, a make-believe memorial service for this character. And this was all before the opera opened. So this period of intense preparation, and I ask you to think, what can you do? I mean, I subscribe to the San Francisco Opera, and I can never quite get there in time to read the program, so I'm fumbling through the program. I have to take out my phone and use it as a flashlight because the house lights go down, and I'm frantically reading the synopsis of the first act when the house lights go down. And, I don't, that's not an ideal situation. And I often wonder, what can we do as museums and presenters and producers to give people just the essential information that they need to understand a bit about what they will see. Historically, we've been doing pre-performance talks. I believe, and I don't know for sure, but the people who go to these talks are the people who are already very knowledgeable about the art, and they want more knowledge. But I don't know, and then it's complicated because if you do the pre-performance talk in your main venue, you have to get everyone out a half hour before the show starts because you have to clear the house, and it's too early, So I've seen some people offer, this happened with the National Theatre of Great Britain when they were touring the US and they were performing in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is a university town. They had the top ticket price of $80 and they sold a premium ticket of $120, which included an executive briefing. Right now, no one wants to go to a lecture, but everyone wants an executive briefing, even though it's the same thing, right? But I just thought that was creative. A little 15-minute briefing by a scholar. And how many people, they sold out instantly. Of course, it was Patrick Stewart, so, everyone. But it's interesting. I think people will pay, this is just my theory, people will pay extra to have the experience unlocked for them. Because once they pay, once they purchase 2, 3, or 4 tickets, and they've had dinner, and they've paid to park, they're spending $600, $700, and another $20, if it makes all the difference, is really incrementally not very much. The program notes, sometimes you read them, sometimes you don't. We ask questions about programs on surveys, and we find that most people use programs after they take them home, and if they did not like the performance, they go in the trash, and if they like them, they keep them for maybe 3 days, a week. Some people collect program books for their whole life. How many of you are like that? Yeah? A few? Yeah, you have shelves and shelves of programs. But it's interesting, that's what happens, is when the program is over, all you have is this booklet. It takes on the symbolic meaning of the experience, and some people want to hang on to that for their whole life sometimes. Then you have the artistic exchange, and this is where things get very interesting. Because sometimes this is all you have. People will do no preparation, and afterwards they're going to go home and forget about it, and all you have. And so more and more arts organizations are embedding the engagement in the performance itself. All right, now in museums, you have wall texts, you have audio guides, you have choices. The engagement is there for you because in museums, you don't know in advance who's coming, so you can't reach them generally. And then afterwards, it's very difficult to stay in touch with them because you don't necessarily know who they are, right? In the performing arts, people buy tickets so we can usually get a hold of them. But what you're seeing is more and more arts organizations actually embedding the engagement. So again, this started with the opera. You're just starting to see in the orchestra field apps, smartphone apps. I'll show you an image in a minute of instantaneous commentary. So you're listening to concert and you're watching your phone and you're getting concert commentary. All right, now this is the theme of the Firebird. Now the oboes play the theme. And it's educational content delivered during the concert. It's very controversial. I did a test of one of these devices at the New York Philharmonic many years ago, and the pianist threatened to withdraw from the performance because he was so insulted that people would be looking at their phones during the concert. We have an amazing new venue in Miami called the New World Center. This is the home of the New World Symphony. It is a venue designed for the visual experience of music. And surrounding the stage are these 5 convex panels, 13 high-definition video projectors, and the audience is immersed in the visual experience. It's truly a new hybrid art form. Incredibly exciting. I wish I had more time to talk about that. We're seeing more short introductions from the stage by conductors, even artistic directors. And really, this is all you have. You have to make a decision as an institution how much context you insist your audience have before they see a work of art. Right? Sometimes the answer is none. If you believe the art speaks for itself and needs no explanation. And sometimes, for some works of art, just need more introduction. My favorite example of this is the Martha Graham Dance Company. They have a famous piece they dance called Appalachian Spring, which is the music of Aaron Copland. And they produced a 4-minute introductory video. Of course, they had archival video of Martha Graham talking to Aaron Copland. And when they show this video, the audience response is much different than when they do not show this video, because people understand a little bit about what they're about to see when they don't have the background. So we're starting to see more organizations actually insist on providing audience members with at least a little context on what they're about to see. In museums, this is much more prevalent. There are many great examples of interactive, interpretive exhibits that help people make meaning from the work. At the Museum of New and Old Art in Hobart, Tasmania, there's no text on the wall. Everyone gets a device when you walk in, and that's where you read about what you're seeing. It follows your track through the museum. You can upload it to your own the web and access it afterwards, and it becomes your living record of your visit to their museum. It's wonderful. And then this is the app the Philadelphia Orchestra. This is the app the Philadelphia Orchestra is using. It's called Live Note, and again, it's connected to a Wi-Fi signal in the hall, and you're getting live, real-time commentary on a smartphone. Now, usually they seat these people in the balcony. So that they don't disturb other audience members who prefer not to see glowing devices during a concert. But you notice here that the background is gray, dark, So they're really trying to minimize the light from the device. So all of this sort of an existential question: does art speak for itself, or does it need explanation? And I think what we're seeing is in America, fewer and fewer people have the arts education background to understand the art. So slowly, the marketplace is demanding more interpretive assistance. And that's what we're slowly seeing here. Okay, at the end of the arc, we're approaching the second half. The moment it ends is this wonderful moment where people are thinking, what should I make of that? Sometimes there's immediate applause. How are we doing? Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. Bless you. Okay, perfect. Someday I'd like to do a study of standing ovations. In the US now, the audiences stand almost every night, no matter what. My UK friends tell me this is uniquely American. But I sort of wonder if this is people validating their decision to spend money and go. And also people don't know the difference between a great performance and a good performance. That's a terrible thing to say. So they, when in doubt, stand up. And then I want to know when people start standing up, it's like dominoes falling. It's like, you can't see if the person in front of you stands up, so you stand up just so you can see, and then everyone's standing up. That's crazy. But there's this wonderful moment, and honestly, some people, I think, really prefer not to talk, just to go home and reflect quietly for maybe days, and then maybe open up the program book or talk to people. Other people like to dive in and argue about it right away. What did you think of that? Why did they do that? So different ways of making meaning. So we have post-performance discussions. We've been doing this for so many years, right? This was my favorite post-performance discussion at Yerba Buena Center. It was after a conceptual dance performance by the artist Ralph Lemon. And half the people thought it was the worst thing they'd ever seen, and half the people thought it was the best thing they'd ever seen. And we were just looking at each other across the table like, did we go to the same thing? And then the janitor walked through and asked everyone to leave, which was surreal, totally surreal. But I think we spend a lot of energy designing and facilitating post-performance discussions, but I ask you, who comes to those? Really? I know Steppenwolf Theater in Chicago, they have a post-performance discussion after every night, all season long. But that has huge staffing requirements. Someone has to stay, to facilitate. And sometimes half the audience stays. But it depends on the work. Some wonderful examples, the American Contemporary Theater in San Francisco has a format they call theater on the couch. They have psychiatrists analyze the characters in the play. It's a little different approach. There's Freud there. A number of theaters are doing fun things with Post-it notes. They're asking audience members to write words and stick them on the wall or the window. And other audience members can see what other people are doing. It's a lot of fun, right? I don't have this on a slide, but we've been working on audience-generated word clouds where people text a word. You ask a question like, how did the performance make you feel? And you text your answer and an SMS message to a specific number, and then you watch a word cloud grow which you project onto the wall in your theater. It's kind of fun. Technology is here. And a lot of organizations are now trying to get more people writing about their performance. We almost have no more critics writing for major newspapers or minor newspapers. So theaters especially are trying to nurture citizen critics, regular people who can write. And I think we should be training them, we should be teaching them criticism to build a critical capacity in our communities. And I also think that arts organizations should be distributing critical reviews of their work, bad or good. Never just one, more than one, because no one is always, critics are not always right? To teach people how to have a critical reaction to the art. And this is what's missing in our media, but it's hopefully growing online. So this theater company, South Coast Repertory, is actually cultivating writers to post to their Facebook groups, and they're encouraging people to read their criticism. This organization called University Musical Society, or UMS, they've created a special website just for engagement. It's called umslobby.org. I encourage you to look at it. It's not their regular website. There's no sales and marketing happening on this website. It's strictly for engaging, reading about upcoming artists, offering comments. Interesting, a second website for engagement. And of course, where do most people make sense of artistic work they've just seen? Right? In the car on the way home. It's like, how many consultants did you have to pay to figure out that most engagement happens through conversation on the way home? And of course it does. And what can you do to stimulate critical conversation on the way home, right? Because we think a lot about keeping people in the venue for post-performance discussion, but the people who leave is most people. The big win is getting people talking about the work on the way home. You can't control that discussion, but I would challenge you to think that you can seed that discussion. You can start it. For example, by publishing a list of questions in your program book that people can ask each other on the way home. Not answers, just questions. Maybe answers on the website if they really want to see. But this is where, for me, this is the big win, is trying to get people to talk about the work. Because when they talk about the work, they realize they had different experiences, they noticed different things, and it really enhances their experience when they play off each other as to what they felt and what they noticed in the art. And then finally, this impact echo. What can you do? What can you provide people that will help them remember? People hold on to their program books for a reason. Well, what else can you provide people? An image? Can you email them a production photo or an audio file of a piece that was played or something for their digital scrapbook that will allow them to... I've always wished that someone would invent a website, sort of like Facebook for the arts, but where people could accumulate mementos, digital memorabilia, of the arts programs they've attended. And you would accumulate it over your life, and you could always go back and see, wow, when I was 21 years old, I went to this theater production. Just as a way of remembering, because it becomes the story of your life. Really, those peak experiences, and when we forget them, they're gone. And I would like to think there's more we can do as a field to help the public remember the experiences they have with us. Because that is impact, that's our mission. I'm going to go through this quickly and wrap up so we can get to your questions. But we've done some surveying of audiences and asked them a battery of questions about their engagement preferences. What kinds of activities do you like to do before and after? And how much do you like to engage? And we've done cluster analysis to segment the audience based on their engagement preferences. And so the biggest segment, and this is now, 5 years old, and I have a second one here after I finish. The readers, most people will at least read a little something. That's it. casual talkers, right? Lots of casual talkers, including many who are not readers. Insight seekers, the people who really go for a more in-depth understanding, they will come to a pre-performance talk or they'll stay for a post-performance discussion. Critical reviewers, people who go and seek out reviews. You know, and I think review, again, I've said it already, this is a great way to help people make sense of their own experience. Because they read a review and they say, oh, I agree, or I disagree. And then what we call technology-based processors, these are people who are blogging, people who are posting to social media about their experiences. And it's a relatively small number of people. So this is just one way of looking at this. Active learners was the sixth segment. And these are people who are really seeing engagement as part of their lifelong learning experience. And they're very, very involved. So I just ask you, when you design post-performance discussions, who are you targeting? Are you targeting casual talkers or active learners? We wish that everyone was an active learner, right? But they're not. You also have many people in other segments. And this was another, a similar segmentation approach that we did with a study for the San Francisco Ballet audiences. Different mix. In this case, they're about, ballet people are crazy. They're like disciples. They're so into it, some of them. And they want to know everything about the dancers sometimes. So they want to read about their lives and where they grew up and where they studied, which is great. So I don't think you need to do this kind of research to know that in your audience are many different kinds of people who have different kinds of preferences for engagement. And you just have to ask yourself, what are you providing them? Most people are in what I call the big middle. They want a little interpretive assistance. 80% of audiences at classical music concerts want a little speaking from the stage in the US. 80%. 20% don't want any talking, and they're very passionate about it. It's like a meditation, and any verbal information ruins their experience. So they're becoming like a boutique audience, which I think is a new segment. Most people are in the big middle. They want at least a little engagement. They'll give you a couple minutes of time, maybe listening to a podcast on the way to a performance or an exhibition, if you can make it easy for them. So just to summarize, this is kind of an institutional view. I think I have a laser pointer here, yeah. So it all sort of starts with marketing here. We talked about the importance of marketing as the start of the engagement cycle. The moment people buy a ticket, they get on a little bit of a conveyor belt, and you're increasing their readiness to receive the art by giving them context, helping them appreciate. Some Broadway producers are really good at this. They send you an email right after you buy a ticket, then a week later they send you another one with a sound clip, then they send you, 3 days before the performance, they send you an audio, a video file, and they're like really good at getting people excited. So they show up and their anticipation level is really high. And after lunch, I'll be speaking about impact, and we show that high anticipation levels lead to higher impact. Then you have the experience itself, and then everything you do afterwards. And then I would argue that offering people an opportunity to provide feedback is part of the engagement cycle. Because if you do it really well, you're teaching people how to have a critical reaction to art. And then ideally you take all that information inside and you make decisions about programs, and it starts all over again. So that's really, it's about all all I have for you on engagement. I encourage you to think of engagement as this sort of a philosophy, an organizational philosophy that brings together everyone, I hope. Now, I've met some artistic directors who really don't care about education. I'm shocked and saddened to say. They see education as a necessary evil to explain the art for the poor people who don't already understand it. But I think that's the exception now, and more people are really understanding that helping audiences make meaning from work is really your mission. So thank you, and now I'll ask Hilda to take questions.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, thank you, Alan, and thank you also for introducing a new field of art history studies. The history of standing ovations is something that I really want to read at one point. Now we're opening up for questions, and do you want to answer one question at a time, or do you want me to collect a couple of questions?
Well, you can take one at a time. Sure.
Good morning, Tale Hendenes, Dansens Hus. The audience feedback situation isn't always the easiest to solve. Do you have any great ideas on how to get them to respond, or or not be provoked, or like not? Sometimes it sort of ruins their the experience if they sort of get hassled.
Yes.
To talk about it.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think, shoving a tablet computer in someone's hands the minute they walk out of a theater is the absolute wrong time. And we have to realize, we have to respect their experience and really allow them to go home and let the experience percolate. And then survey them maybe a day later. So I have a lot of information to share if you're interested in best practices in survey administration. I won't bore you with the details now. It's getting more and more difficult because everyone's being surveyed about everything they do. Like, I get a survey from United Airlines every time I fly, and I only respond when there is a big problem, right? And I think that's part of the problem is you only hear from people who are very unhappy or very happy. But there are lots of things you can do. I think, for example, explaining to your audience why it's important for them to respond when they are surveyed. 2 is not surveying them except when you really need to. Right? And then 3, I would say sharing results back to them. I mean, we've developed some software that it's an online dashboard tool where people finish the survey, they jump to a page where they can see the results of the survey, so they can compare their own feelings with other audience members. So there's lots you can do to improve that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Come on, share with me some of the work you're doing to engage your audiences and visitors.
Yeah, do you have any experiences, especially one that didn't work? I always find those experiences the most interesting.
It's a little bit, my name is Kristin. Hi. Nice to meet you. What I find is that when we've done surveys, it's the women who answer, and I don't get to know, even though there might be a majority anyway, but definitely the majority of the answering audience, which means you never know what those poor guys are thinking, which is a bit sad, really, because, maybe next time, you let all the women pass, and you stick that thing in the face of the men, but I really wish that some men could tell me what would it take for you to answer once upon, every now and again.
How do you survey? You hand paper surveys to people?
Online, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, with paper survey, this is like so much fun. I love this. Like, we have actually counted visually males and females in an audience to compare with survey results so we could know what the bias is, the gender bias. And it's about 5 to 10 percentage points from what we can see. So I love studies that always start with, the typical audience member is female. I'm like, no, that's just who takes surveys. But, gender, it's fascinating. Gender variations by art form. Dance is heavily skewed female. Theater is fairly even. But jazz skews male. It's fascinating, right? But survey, when you hand people a paper survey, the women have somewhere to put it. They put it in their purse, right? The men, if they're not wearing a jacket, they kind of fold it in half and they think maybe I'll put it in my pocket. Or they usually hand it to their wife. Of course they do, That's right, yeah. So I suppose we could create special incentives for men to complete surveys.
It worked once.
Yeah?
And you will know this. When we offered a T-shirt of the football club, but that was not
A T-shirt of the football club. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Anyone else to share with us some of your own engagement activities?
It's a little bit. Well, we tend to avoid direct engagement just because the fear of annoying someone sometimes gets bigger than the actual drive to reach like the major middle
Interesting.
part. Well, we work with contemporary dance, so our the annoyed people are very annoyed if they get annoyed.
You could have a special room for them.
Yes.
Yes.
And we can take them
The
off
crying room.
yes, and we can also take them off the mailing lists. That's a good idea. We
Right.
can like star people.
Right.
But how afraid should you be of annoying people with your pre and post performance this and that?
I don't understand because they don't have to come.
No, but if they have a ticket because they love it, but they love to hate actually everything
They
we
love to
right.
hate.
Yes.
I think that's a wonderful new marketing campaign
Yes.
you have there. Love to hate us.
Yeah. Yeah, so we should just ignore, let them hate.
Well,
let
I
them
think
just-
artistic directors are very sensitive. They get letters in the mail and they spend hours and days writing long replies. And it's just those are the people who care enough to write. So take them to dinner or something.
Yeah.
But I think they get
budget it in.
hypersensitive to a very small number of people who like to complain. And this is why I think it does help sometimes to survey your audience about their engagement preferences, because then you have data that just frames the problem. If the problem is 1% or 2% of the audience, it's not enough to get really excited about. But yeah, I understand.
Good
It's,
idea.
we don't want to alienate anyone.
Hi, my name is Aggie. I work for the Arctic Philharmonic Orchestra in Tromsø, but I just wanted to say something about the after talks. We've been doing that not at the orchestra, but with stage performances. And my experience is that you kind of want to engage the audience, but the people who show up at the after talks, there are always cultural people working within the field. So it kind of ends up being like an internal discussion. And also, I think it's a problem with creating magic on stage, and then you meet everyone from the stage. You don't leave the room with the magic in your head. You break the
fourth wall.
Yeah.
Well, depending on how you look at it, that could be good. I mean, breaking the fourth wall is great. It's magic, and then it's over. And you're making it. You're offering accessibility anyway, so I don't know what to say about the post-performance talks except to facilitate them in a way that the experts in the room shut up, you know. It's very difficult, or you create a separate discussion for very, you know, knowledgeable people. That's very difficult. I mean, a lot of people at post-performance discussions, you'll notice there's two people. Some of them sit right in front and they ask, you know, they want to ask questions. And then there's a lot of people who sit in the back and they just want to listen. And I think, you know, they're both very valid. And the people who are sitting in the back really are, you know, want to hear how other people feel, but they're not ready yet to offer their own opinion. Yet they may have one. So I think, you know, it's also a very different discussion when the artist is present than when the artist is not present, right? And I think that's one of the things you have to decide is, you know, because people won't say things in front of the artist, like, why did you do, you know, I thought you were playing out of tune, you know.
Another thing I found interesting was being invited in the process before the play was actually finished. That was kind of more interesting to see some work in progress and then have a discussion, and the premiere, the opening is in 2 months.
Yeah.
That's also a good way of actually engaging people to have a say.
Right. I mean, I've seen in surveys a lot of interest in open rehearsals. And I don't know, I think some people are interested in the work in progress. I don't know how many people really want to see a real rehearsal, because it's kind of boring to watch. So I think what you have is you have people like producing open rehearsals, where it's not really a rehearsal. It's more of a performance, but with some, you know, the director is giving notes. So that's interesting to me, is how you actually stage an open rehearsal. But it's wonderful that audience members want to come. They want to see how the sausage is made, we say, you know. But I also think there's an informality to the open rehearsal. People can get up, they can walk around, they can go get a drink, they don't have to worry, they can talk to each other. And I think that's very appealing to many people. We have a wonderful event in the San Francisco area called the San Francisco Ethnic Dance Festival every June, and they feature 30 different ethnic dance companies. And they perform, but they have auditions in January, and they ticket their auditions. And people bring their kids. Oh my God. You know, they come and go all day, and you just see company after company after company. And they give people rating sheets as if they were judges on reality TV, you know. And people love it. It's only $10. And it's very informal. You can come and go. So, you know, yeah, absolutely. Try to think of opportunities for your audiences to do that.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Doug. I'm onboarding Ticketco, a ticketing system these days, and I'm offboarding a soccer club called the Brann in Bergen. Would you say that your arch model, which I found very interesting, is applicable on everything from art to like a big rock festival and a soccer club or American football club? Would you say, or your findings from your research, that this is applicable for all kinds of consuming arts and experiences?
Yeah, I think so. I think people get very emotionally involved in sporting events, just as much as arts, and absolutely. I mean, the arc is by definition in reference to one program, you know, one event. But of course, people come multiple times, and they do this across organizations, And for some people who are very regular attenders, it's not just an arc, it's like a constant cycle. They're constantly going, you know. So I think there are limitations of the arc if you start talking about the totality of someone's experience at all the arts organizations in their community. But I would think that the basic framework would apply to sporting events.
Which would be very interesting from a marketing point of view. What tricks you can do in front of the event and directly after the event.
Right.
What tools you can use, which opportunities you have in your ticketing system, in your CRM system,
Yes.
and then you could like opt out for those who don't want the after talk. Like
Right.
for a simple thing we've tried to solve electronically is if we win the game home, we have a thing called kokolele, you know, when the whole team sings in front of the supporters. What wouldn't that do for the supporters on their way home when they get the newsletter with this live 10 minutes after it's happened?
Yeah.
When they're on the bus or the train back home.
People would love
and,
that.
people will love it. And we already there, we should start building up the experience for the next game.
Right.
And I think that would be a kind of thinking that should be applied to like a rock or blues festival or a jazz club, because you could easily use the YouTube, the social medias to connect with the artists and the stuff they do, to build up like, I have to
professional
attend this.
sports has been very good at this for a long time, particularly selling memorabilia. You know, so many people go home with merchandise, which reinforces the brand, and that's where I don't think we do enough to connect the experience with our brand. You know, by giving people, I don't know why we don't just give everyone on the way out the door something to hold on to that reinforces our brand.
We only have 3.5 minutes left, so do we have time for one more question? Anyone want to ask any advice?
Hello, my name is Trude. I work for a small contemporary music organization, an ensemble. And the way we think of engagement is first of all working with participants. And you didn't talk so much about that. Of course, you can't have everyone participating in every show.
Making music.
But ways of doing performances, I think you touched it's very little like doing different. Is it this static thing that it has been for years and years and years? There is the performance, and it's before and it's after. So what does the audience, have you done research that says something about this more engagement part of?
Well, programming itself is becoming more interactive and therefore more engaging. So audience members getting involved. I mean, you're seeing, do you have the term co-creation? Do you hear that? We use that term a lot, where the audience plays a role in the program in some way. At concerts, it's more difficult at concerts, but sometimes the audience is allowed to choose the encore. That's very superficial. But what are you doing to engage audiences more in the program itself?
Let children compose and use.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Right?
Sorry,
So playing work that is composed by people in your community?
Yeah, for example. And having members from the community into performances.
I think that's great. I think that's all part of this idea of engagement, of making connections with your community.
So are we ready to round up?
We probably should wind down as the other sessions.
I was thinking when you spoke that there's a lot of things that you're talking about that reminds me of the development of modern education. And it takes into account that we're not the same, which I think is it's a very obvious point to make. But it's a very good thing that the arts education, now the arts also have the opportunity to access that knowledge and to get sort of the real methods and how to address it. And I thank you very much for it.
Thank you so much.
You've been
a
great help for
audience.
For approaching
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.